Naaman, the shocking divine encounter that revealed a miraculous redemption in a dirty river. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Naaman, a mighty man of valor, served as the commander of the army of the king of Syria. Renowned for his valor in battle, he was a man of great authority. Yet, amid his victories, he bore a secret leprosy, a disease that marred his skin and heart, rendering him both powerful and pitifully vulnerable. In the courts of Aram, the whispers of his martial greatness filled the air, while shadows of his affliction spoke of his mortality. In Naaman's household, a young Israelite girl, captured and brought to Syria during one of his raids, became a glimmer of hope amidst despair. With timidity yet unwavering resolution, she approached him one fateful evening, suggesting he seek out Elisha, the prophet of Yahweh. The boldness of her words lit a flicker of hope in Naaman's heart, overshadowed by the weight of his disease and the lack of a formal invitation to seek healing. Determined and burdened with uncertainty, Naaman departed for Israel, laden with gifts of gold, silver, and garments of honor, tokens of his command. Approaching the palace of King Joram, he presented his case, only to encounter confusion and dismay. The king, panicked and uncertain, realized he possessed no power to heal. Naaman felt the shadows of his affliction grow, blinding him to the divine plan unfolding nearby. Yet, as whispers of Naaman's arrival spread through the city, Elisha, undaunted by the royal chaos, sent a messenger with a simple yet profound command: go wash in the Jordan River 7 times. The instruction struck Naaman with bewilderment. Was this truly all? He had expected grand signs, miracles draped in smoke and fire. Instead, he faced the prospect of entering the murky Jordan, a river scorned for its muddiness. Anger flared up within him, rage and pride fought a spiritual battle. A warrior reduced to washing in a river. He nearly turned away, abandoning both hope and healing. However, as he stood at the brink of the Jordan, his loyal servants, wise beyond their station, implored him. If he had asked you to do a great thing, would you not have done it? How much more, then, when he simply says, wash and be clean? Deeply stirred by their words, Naaman hesitated, feeling the root of his pride tremble against a desperation for redemption. With a heavy heart and trembling resolve, he approached the unassuming waters. The Jordan invited him with its swirling eddies. As he dipped for the first time, doubts surged. 1. 2. 3. Each immersion felt as if he were stripping away layers of skepticism, surrendering to a force greater than himself. On the 7th plunge, emerging from the water, astonishment coursed through him. He was healed. His flesh was restored, fresh and new, like that of a child. In that instance, the weight of not only his affliction but also his pride was cast aside. Standing awash in the muddy water, a greater realization dawned upon him: faith had taken root. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. As Naaman stood in awe, cleansed not just of physical leprosy but also reborn in spirit, another question pulled at his heart: what now awaited him in this newfound faith? Would he dare to proclaim the God of Israel as his own, or would he return to a life of pride, denying the power that had just transformed his existence? What path lay ahead as the journey of a warrior truly began? And Naaman, now standing upon the riverbank, glanced down at his hands smooth as the day he drew his first breath. The miracle performed by the God of Israel invoked both reverence and wonder within him. With each heartbeat, he felt the surge of life flowing through him, an affirmation of faith unfurling in his soul. He turned from the waters of the Jordan and made his way to the abode of Elisha, uncertain yet resolute. The journey back was filled with solemn contemplation, his heart pulsed with a mix of gratitude and awe, for he had encountered the living God and felt his mighty hand. As he approached the prophet's dwelling, he wrestled with the implications of his healing. What did it mean to belong now to a God who was not the God of his forefathers? Upon reaching Elisha's house, Naaman stood at the threshold, calling for the prophet. Elisha did not come forth himself, but sent a messenger to greet him. "Go and tell Naaman," spoke the messenger, "that he should offer thanks and proclaim his faith." These words pierced Naaman's heart, affording him a fresh conviction. He yearned to confess his new allegiance to the Lord of hosts. "I shall not return to my master, the king of Syria," Naaman declared boldly, his voice resonating with newfound authority. "From this day forth, I shall enter no more into the sanctuaries of foreign gods, but will offer sacrifices to the God of Israel alone." Elisha, hearing the echo of Naaman's declaration, came forth at last. "Your faith has made you whole, Naaman," he said, his eyes reflecting divine wisdom. "Render unto your God a heart of sincerity, and do not forget the path you have traveled." Standing in the presence of the prophet, Naaman knelt before him, overwhelmed by the enormity of the moment. "I am grateful, O prophet of Yahweh. But I implore you, accept these gifts of gold and garments as tokens for your service." Elisha shook his head, saying, "I will not receive them, for the grace of God is not an offer to be bought. Your healing is a testament to the goodness of the Lord, a gift to you of his mercy alone." And so, Naaman departed, leaving his burdens behind, a testimony to the transformative power of faith. As he moved towards his chariot, he looked back at the land of Israel, a land rich in covenant promise, and his heart surged with resolve. He would not merely turn his back upon the memories of leprosy but would bear witness to the God who healed him. Yet, as he journeyed back towards Syria, a disquiet stirred within him, for a lingering concern weighed heavily on his heart. "What shall I do about the altars of Rimmon?" he pondered, recalling his obligations to his king. The thought troubled him deeply. Could he serve both the Lord of Israel and the gods of his homeland without compromising his newfound faith? Oh, how the Lord had begun a work in him, for this inner turmoil revealed the deep-rooted battle between allegiance and identity. Would he find the courage to renounce all others? Little did Naaman know that this was merely the beginning of divine orchestration preparing him for a greater mission. For even as he sat in his chariot, visions of his supernatural cleansing danced before him, and the question echoed through the chambers of his spirit, "What more might he seek from me? What divine purpose awaits the one called from darkness into marvelous light?" Thus, the story of Naaman's journey from a warrior to a witness unfolded, a canvas upon which God had begun to paint his sovereign design through the life of a man once defined by his affliction. As the road unfurled before him, the tapestry of redemption beckoned, revealing that God's plan was just beginning to unveil the depths of his grace and glory. As Naaman traveled upon the road to Syria, the sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows upon the earth. Yet, within the depths of his heart, a brilliant light blossomed, a newfound desire for truth and righteousness that stirred constantly. Each beat of his heart resonated with the memory of his cleansing, a vivid reminder of the power held by the God of Israel. In the quiet of his chariot, Naaman whispered prayers to the Lord, feeling a holy burden settle over him. "O Lord, how can I be both servant and witness? How can I worship you and yet fulfill my obligations to my king?" His thoughts were tumultuous, besieged by the contradiction between faith and duty. Days passed, and with them the weight of his decision grew heavier. Before long, Naaman arrived at the gates of his homeland, greeted by the familiar sights and sounds of Syria. Yet, they felt foreign, a stark contrast to the sacred serenity he had experienced in Israel. As he entered the royal palace, memories washed over him, moments of pride and valor, the echoes of battle cries reverberating in his mind. But now, all was different. Approaching the throne, where his king awaited, Naaman bowed deeply, yet his heart yearned to express the transformation within. "O king, I return from the land of Israel, and there, the Lord Yahweh has healed me of my leprosy." The king, intrigued, leaned forward. "Speak, Naaman. How is this possible? What is this new faith you have embraced?" Naaman's spirit surged with courage, and he recounted his encounter with Elisha. "He instructed me to wash 7 times in the Jordan, and behold, my skin was renewed as that of a child. The God of Israel is the true God, for he healed me when I was broken. Yet apprehension loomed over Naaman, for he sensed the tension in the room. His king's brow furrowed, and Naaman understood the tumult of loyalty he now faced. Would his proclamation of faith bring persecution? Would he be cast aside for his boldness? In that moment, the Holy Spirit gripped Naaman's heart, and he remembered the words of the prophet, "Render unto your God a heart of sincerity." Gathering his resolve, he pressed further, "I can no longer offer my heart to the altars of Rimmon, for my devotion is to the living God alone. I seek to worship him and serve him wholeheartedly." A deep silence fell over the throne room, where even the air seemed to still in utter awe. The courtiers exchanged anxious glances, grappling with the weight of Naaman's declaration. Finally, the king spoke, his voice steady but laced with uncertainty. "You will still serve me, Naaman, for your position is valuable to my reign. But tell me, if you go forth proclaiming this God, could it not bring division among our people?" Naaman met the king's gaze, unwavering. "To serve you, O king, is to govern with integrity. But to serve the living God is to embrace the very essence of life and truth. My loyalty is no longer divided." In that moment, a revelation ignited within him. Could his bold confession be a catalyst for others? Would the power of Yahweh extend and transform not only his life but also that of his people? Naaman felt a stirring in his soul, a glimpse into a divine purpose yet unfathomed. And thus, within the heart of a warrior once defined by leprosy, a plan began to unfold, mysterious and profound. For God was orchestrating something beyond Naaman's understanding, a path leading towards reconciliation and hope, one that would bridge the chasm between nations and their gods. But what unseen challenges awaited him? What trials would test this faith in the face of adversity? Little did Naaman know, the depths of God's sovereign plan were far greater than he could yet comprehend. As the sun set behind the great hills of Syria, casting a golden hue upon the land, Naaman pondered the heaviness of his words shared with the king. His heart, ignited by the light of Yahweh, now wrestled with deep uncertainties. The weighty truth he bore was not light, yet the burden felt strangely liberating. He resolved within himself to seek counsel and confirmation from the God who had healed him. That evening, as the stars flickered in the vast, darkened sky, Naaman withdrew to a secluded place within the courtyard of the palace. Alone, he knelt upon the cool earth, his heart laid bare before the Lord. "O Yahweh, God of Israel," he cried out, "guide me in this new path. Strengthen my resolve to live for you, even in the face of opposition. Grant me the words to speak and the wisdom to lead my people towards the truth." In his fervent prayer, the sound of a rustling breeze enveloped him, as if the heavens themselves were listening. Presently, a vision began to form before him. A great multitude gathered, worshipping in unison, lifting their voices in harmony. Yet, that tapestry of hope was marred by shadowy figures, reminders of the darkness that clung to the hearts of men. At the break of dawn, Naaman rose with a renewed spirit, ready to confront both the challenges before him and the ancient traditions of his homeland. As he took his place once more beside the king, a swift stir rippled through the court. The king's advisers gathered in hushed tones, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "Have you returned to serve your king faithfully?" the king inquired, eyes piercing through Naaman. "I have, O king," Naaman answered boldly, "but I am called to serve one greater. The God of Israel has not only healed me but has placed upon my heart the duty to guide our people towards his truth." Murmurs erupted amongst the counselors. They spoke of Naaman's former life, of battles fought with unwavering loyalty to the throne, and yet his newfound zeal for a God they scarcely understood. What of the altars of our ancestors? What of our traditions? One adviser raised, their voice quivering with the weight of unspoken fears. "Listen." Naaman's declaration pierced the air. "In my journey, I learned that true victory lies not in our gods of stone and wood, but in the living God who breathes life into all things. The healing I received was not for me alone, it is a testament to all who would believe." A silence enveloped the throne. In that moment, Naaman felt the spiritual struggle encompassing the hearts of those present. He sensed the pull of the flesh against the spirit, fear against faith, yet, deep within, he understood that this was the very essence of his mission. As weeks passed, Naaman witnessed the resistance amongst the people slowly transform into curiosity. The tales of his healing began to spread like wildfire among the communities. People came seeking to know the God who had delivered Naaman from his affliction. He proclaimed the goodness of Yahweh, unveiling the promise of redemption and grace. However, the shadows that clung to the minds of the people were slow to release their hold, and Naaman found himself besieged by those who cherished the idolatry of their fathers. "Take care, Naaman." Caution stirred in whispered tones. "Your boldness could lead to our ruin." Yet Naaman felt a divine urgency growing within him. With every passing day, he realized that it was not only his heart in the balance, but the salvation of a nation. He lifted his voice in intercession that the eyes of his people might be opened, understanding that God's ultimate plan was unfolding right before them. And as Naaman stood amongst them, the words of the prophet echoed within him: "I will place a new spirit within them, I will remove from them their heart of stone and give them a heart of flesh." Still, the hour would soon come when he would face the greatest test of his faith. For soon, a trial would arise, a challenge born not only from within his nation, but one that would ripple through the surrounding kingdoms, compelling Naaman to finally choose between his loyalty to the king or his devotion to the living God. But what lay ahead remained veiled in mystery, for the sovereign plan of the Lord was still being woven. Would Naaman's faith carry him through the coming tempest? Little did he know that the true story of redemption would begin to unfold, setting the stage for a deliverance far greater than he had ever imagined. As the sun began to rise, painting the sky with hues of pink and gold, Naaman stirred with a sense of urgency that coursed through his veins. He knew that the peace of the morning would soon be eclipsed by the turmoil looming over his people. The whispers of dissent still echoed in his ears, yet he felt the weight of a calling heavier than any sword he had wielded in battle. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in Syria grew tense, rippling with fear. News had reached the palace of an impending conflict with Israel. A mighty army moved, and the hearts of the people quaked. Naaman stood in the court, a figure of valor, yet his soul wrestled with the choice placed before him. "What must I do, O Lord?" he prayed quietly, seeking clarity amidst the clamor. Then, it happened. Word came that a significant force had taken position near the border, and the king called upon Naaman to lead the troops into battle. The command was clear, yet an internal struggle raged. Would he march forth with a heart divided between loyalty to the throne and allegiance to the God who had healed him? "Naaman, gather your men." The king urged, his voice invoking reverence. "We must, as one, defend our land." With drawn breath, Naaman acknowledged the call, yet hesitated. "O king, if I might speak," he ventured, his voice steady. "Might not our victory lie not in mere sword and shield, but in seeking the counsel of the living God?" The council erupted in disputes, the cacophony of disjointed voices overwhelming the air. "What dost thou speak, Naaman? Shall we rely on the God who is not of our fathers?" Another adviser countered, his brow furrowed in skepticism. "What if there be a power beyond ours?" Naaman pressed, hope igniting in his chest. "The God of Israel has shown his might in healing, could he not also provide deliverance?" The king's eyes narrowed. "What is it that thou propose?" With clarity born from fervent prayer, Naaman spoke. "Let us beseech the Lord of hosts to guide our way. Perhaps a humble approach is required. We may seek intercession from the prophet Elisha, who serves the one true God." And so it was that Naaman, armored not only in his battle gear but also in God's grace, set forth towards the land that had once been his foe. With each step, he felt the burden of the kingdom rest heavily upon his shoulders, the weight magnified by the whispers of doubt that trailed behind him. Upon arriving at the prophet's dwelling, Naaman found himself enveloped by a sense of both reverence and anxiety. Standing upon the threshold, he felt as if the very ground was charged with divine presence. He knocked softly, the sound echoing like a drumbeat of fate. Elisha emerged, not with fanfare or pomp, but as a humble servant of the Most High. "Go, Naaman," he declared simply, "and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and you shall be cleansed." Naaman's heart sank at the command. The dusty waters of the Jordan were no grand river, they held no regal glory. How could such a simple act bring about healing? A wave of anger swelled within him, struggle manifesting against the order given. Yet amid his frustration, he recalled the vision bestowed upon him, the multitude in worship. The glory of God had not vanished, it was quietly beckoning him to fulfill his sovereign will. "Hold fast, Naaman," whispered a voice deep within. Could it be that through this humble act, the Lord desires to reveal his power both to you and to the people? In that sacred moment of choice, Naaman wrestled with his pride, the burden of duty weighing against his faith. As he gazed toward the murky waters of the Jordan, he remembered the words of the prophet, the promise that lay in the obedience to God's command, beyond what he could understand. He plunged into the river, submerging himself as waves of humility crashed around him, and shouts of faith erupted from the depths of his heart. Would he emerge transformed, or would the waters simply reflect his frustration? The path of redemption stretched before him, woven by a divine hand, beckoning him to trust. With the seventh wash, as he rose from the water, his skin glistened like that of a child, unblemished and whole. The miracle of the Lord unveiled itself, and in his astonishment, Naaman understood he had not simply been cleansed of leprosy but had stepped into a greater narrative of God's redemptive work. In that defining moment, a decision loomed before him, greater than the battle at hand. Would he return to Syria as a warrior of flesh or as a champion of faith? Little did he know that the true mission was just beginning, intertwining his destiny with a greater plan, one that would echo through the ages, a plan which would ultimately draw nations to the one true God. Thus, Naaman, flushed with wonder and an awakening spirit, braced for what lay ahead, not yet discerning that the ripple of his faith would usher forth a legacy of salvation, igniting a flame that transcended kingdoms and reached to the very hearts of men. As Naaman emerged from the waters, rejuvenated and freed from the chains of his affliction, he looked upon the banks of the Jordan with disbelief. He felt as if he were standing in the very presence of the Almighty, awe coursing through him like an electric current. Yet, with that profound transformation came a call to action. The Lord had cleansed him, but what was he to do now? Eager to return to Elisha, he hurried through the muddy banks, his heart racing. Upon reaching the prophet's dwelling, the weight of gratitude compelled him to present his offerings. "I owe you much, O man of God," he declared, his voice trembling with fervor. "Take gifts from your servant, for the Lord has made me whole." Elisha, however, met Naaman's exuberance with a stillness born of divine wisdom. "As the Lord lives, before whom I stand, I will not accept anything." His gaze pierced through Naaman's earnestness, revealing a deeper truth. "For it is not my hand that has healed you, but the hand of the God of Israel." Naaman stood perplexed. "But I am a mighty warrior. I come from a land of treasures. Is it not customary to offer thanks to the one who heals?" His words stumbled over themselves, grappling with this strange humility demanded of him. "Your healing is a gift," Elisha replied, his voice calm like the evening breeze. "It is grace. The Lord desires your heart, not your riches." This revelation ignited something new within Naaman, a realization that his healed body was but the first step toward a deeper union with the God who had bestowed such mercy. "Then, if you will not accept my gifts," Naaman continued, his spirit alight with newfound fervor, "let me instead take away from this place 2 mule loads of earth." A shift had taken place in his heart. He understood the worship of the one true God must be carried back to his homeland. Elisha regarded him with the eyes of one who had seen the heart of the Lord. "Go in peace, but remember, the true soil for worship is not in the earth you carry, but in your devotion to him who has delivered you." As Naaman departed, his mind swirled with thoughts of the journey ahead. A journey not of sword or might, but one steeped in faith and obedience. Yet, as he approached the borders of Syria, a quiet dread tugged at his spirit. The familiar landscape whispered doubts. How could he proclaim faith in a God of Israel when surrounded by the very people who had once been his enemies? His heart ached at the thought of what lay ahead, the king's expectations, his own people's misunderstanding, and the challenge of leading with a heart bonded to the God of a foreign land. And so, as he journeyed homeward, Naaman grappled with the intersection of his past and present, emboldened yet apprehensive. On the eve of his return, as he knelt in prayer, seeking the guidance of the God of Elisha, a profound thought gripped him. "Lord," he prayed, "if you have opened my eyes and healed my body, will you not also empower me to be a vessel for your will? What remains of your plan for my life?" As the night enveloped him, Naaman felt a stirring within his spirit, a whisper illuminating the darkness. "You are not merely a soldier, but an ambassador of the covenant. Trust in me, for your testimony shall turn the hearts of many," was the quiet assurance that fell upon him. With renewed conviction, Naaman rose, resolved to proclaim the greatness of Israel's God. The dawn would break fresh and bright, heralding not just his return, but the inception of a divine legacy intertwined with missions beyond his comprehension, a story that would ripple through the ages and awaken faith beyond his homeland. Thus, armed with the earth he had gathered, Naaman readied himself for the trials awaiting him. For what he had yet to learn was that God's plans never falter, and his purpose extends into the very fabric of eternity, waiting to be unveiled in all its divine splendor. As Naaman approached the gates of his city, the sun began to rise, casting golden rays over the land of Aram. He felt the warmth upon his face, and it reminded him of the light of the Lord that had transformed him. In his heart, he carried not only the freshly gathered soil but also a burning desire to share the grace he had received. Yet, foreboding filled his chest with each step closer to his homeland. The city was bustling as the people began their day. Naaman was met with curious glances from those who knew him, and whispers followed him like a gentle breeze. "Is he not the commander who suffered from the dreaded disease? What miracle could have changed him?" He took a deep breath, gathering his courage, for he realized that the path ahead would not be simple. He needed to speak to the king, and what he would declare could reverberate throughout the kingdom. Standing tall, he made his way to the royal palace, where the king, hearing of his return, summoned him forth. "Naaman, my trusted warrior!" the king exclaimed, leaping from his throne to greet him. "I have awaited your return. Tell me of your expedition, and whether fortune favors us in our conflicts." With a heart brimming with the weight of divine testimony, Naaman knelt before the king, casting aside the mantle of pride he once wore. "O king," he began, his voice steady yet humble, "I have come not to speak of victories in battle, but of a greater triumph, the mercy of the God of Israel." A hush fell over the court, and the nobles exchanged bewildered looks. Naaman continued, "I was a leper, an outcast, but the prophet Elisha prayed to the Lord and instructed me to wash in the Jordan. And I followed his words. 7 times I dipped, and I emerged whole. Behold, I am healed." The king stared, his expression shifting from disbelief to awe. "A foreign god healed you? The God of Elisha? This is astounding." Even as he spoke, uncertainty flickered within Naaman. "Yes, my king, yet this healing is but the beginning. For I have learned that the true worship lies not in the earth I carry but in the heart that seeks him." Confusion danced in the eyes of those gathered, but intrigue began to take root. "What do you mean?" the king pressed, unable to grasp the depths of Naaman's change. "I must beseech your acceptance, O king," Naaman replied earnestly. "Grant me leave to serve this God, for I cannot turn my back on the one who has redeemed me. I carry back the soil of Israel not merely for remembrance, but to build an altar unto him." The counselor of the king, a man wise in the ways of state, whispered, "But you serve a king who allows no others beside him. How will you reconcile this allegiance?" Naaman's heart raced as he remembered the whisper of God from the night before, "Trust in me, for your testimony shall turn the hearts of many." But the people will resist, he thought, fighting the doubt that threatened his resolve. Will they heed the tale of a once great enemy turned follower? Yet boldness surged within him. "I will find a way," he declared, his voice ringing with divine conviction. For it is not in the acceptance of mankind that we find favor but in following the path the Almighty lays before us. As Naaman spoke, a silver lining of hope flickered amongst the crowd, and whispers began to circulate. Could a warrior of Aram lead them to faith in the God of Israel? Thus the seed of change began to take root, and with it came the understanding that Naaman's return was not merely for his healing but for the purpose of uniting two worlds, the kingdom of Aram with the grace of the God of Israel. Little did he know, this was just the beginning of a larger plan, a divine orchestration that would bring forth the truths of faith, opening doors he could not yet see, and touching lives far beyond his own. What awaited him would lead him beyond the borders of flesh and blood, heralding a greater mission in God's sovereign narrative. As Naaman stood before the king, the weight of his decision bore down upon him, a former commander now transformed by the power of the living God. The nobles stirred uneasily, and the murmurs in the court grew like a gathering storm amidst uncertainty. The king, a man accustomed to power, looked deep into Naaman's eyes, seeking the truth of his transformation. "Tell me, Naaman," the king commanded, his voice now tinged with curiosity, "what shall become of the allegiance to my kingdom and the worship of your new God?" Naaman, sensing the gravity of the moment, raised his hand as if to calm the tempest of doubt swirling among the courtiers. "O king, my heart is set upon the service of the one who healed me. I seek not to usurp thy throne but to offer my service to the God of Israel, who brought forth my healing from a pit of despair." As he spoke, a hush fell over the assembly, weighed down by the gravity of his claim. The councillors exchanged glances, their skepticism momentarily silenced by the implied authority of a miracle. "But will our people accept this foreign god?" one of the councillors finally dared to ask, casting a shadow of doubt. Naaman turned his eyes toward the east, where the land of Israel lay. "God works beyond our understanding," he replied fervently. "When I bathed in the Jordan, I discovered not just healing but a new identity, a life no longer bound by the chains of leprosy and pride." The king sat back, his brow furrowing in thought. Many had spoken of gods before, yet the evidence of Naaman's healing stood solid as a rock, and something within him began to waver. "Dare I place my trust in this foreign deity?" he pondered aloud. In that moment, a solemn silence enveloped the court, as Naaman felt a rush of holy urgency. "O king," he implored, "allow me to return to Israel for a time, to worship and draw closer to the one who has commanded the heavens and the earth. For as it is written, 'Thou shalt have no other gods before me,' Exodus 20 verse 3. This is the command I must honor." The king's eyes widened with the weight of his role. He knew that the tapestry of faith was woven with sacrifice and choice, and Naaman, as a man once steeped in idolatry, now stood at the threshold of a new way. "If it is true that your faith can heal a soul and change a nation," the king finally responded, "then so be it." But even as Naaman left the king's presence, a stirring grew within him. He carried the soil of Israel in his grasp, yet the deeper truth laid within his heart remained unspoken. What would his people say? For he was not just a servant of a king but now the bearer of divine tidings. Days turned into nights as Naaman traveled back towards Israel, and the whispers of his healing spread like wildfire. He paused to remember the maiden who had first spoken of Elisha. "Your healing is not coincidental," she had said before, "for it is God's plan at work. Trust and see." As he approached the banks of the Jordan once more, Naaman fell to his knees, the soil crumbling in his hands. "Lord, I am unworthy of such grace," he prayed. "Use me as you will. For it is not merely my healing that I seek but the transformation of those around me." With the love of the Almighty flowing within him, Naaman stood anew. He sensed in that moment, a mighty wind of promise that spoke of a greater deliverance. Could it be that in his pursuit of faith, a light would shine upon the hearts of his own people, drawing them into the covenant of the living God? And with that prayer, a divine mystery unfolded, for beyond the horizon lay wonders untold, a path where faith and redemption would intertwine, beckoning Naaman to fulfill a purpose greater than he could ever imagine. The seeds of revival were about to be sown, but what trials awaited as the hand of God began to move? As Naaman rose from the banks of the Jordan, renewed by prayer and purpose, a gentle breeze swept through the trees, whispering promises of unseen truths. He turned his gaze towards the distant hills of Israel, knowing the journey ahead would not just be geographical but spiritual, a pilgrimage of faith. His heart beat with both anticipation and anxiety, for he was to return to a homeland that may not recognize the man who now bore the light of the one true God. With each step, memories flooded his mind, the taunting laughter as he had endured the stigma of leprosy, the charity of the captive maiden, and the penetrating words of Elisha, the prophet of God. Surely, he whispered to himself, all things work together for good to those who love God, Romans 8 verse 28. Could his faith be the key to unlocking the hearts of his fellow countrymen, who clung tightly to their idols? Upon entering the first village, the air thickened with murmurs. Naaman, clad in the garments of a commander, could feel the eyes of the townsfolk upon him. Children turned to glance, fingers pointed in wonder. A woman drew back her child, still scarred by memories of the leprous commander who had once haunted the hills. Naaman! One shouted, breaking the monotony of fear. What brings you here, in such health? His heart raced as he approached the gathering, feeling both the weight of their doubt and yearning for their acceptance. I have come, he proclaimed with a voice fortified by divine assurance, as a servant of the God of Israel. He has healed me and shown me his love, a love that can transform. A deep silence enveloped them, broken only by the rustle of leaves in the wind. Doubt still lingered, like shadows in the fading light of day. One elderly man, stepping forward, dared to voice the hesitation of many. But how can we trust the testimony of a man who served a foreign king, one who worshipped the idols of the nations? Has he not come to deceive us into forsaking our gods for a fleeting miracle? The accusation stung, yet Naaman's spirit remained steadfast. Behold, said Naaman, lifting his hands, for I was bound by leprosy and bitterness, a life unworthy in the sight of the Lord. He spoke to me through his prophet, and I was cleansed. The God of Israel is not merely a deity among deities. He alone is the Creator, the Healer, and the Redeemer. The wind seemed to carry his words, swirling around them, igniting a flicker of hope in some hearts. Yet others recoiled further, drawing strength from their centuries of tradition. Will you not hear his call? Naaman continued, his voice unwavering. For it is written, if my people, who are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land. 2 Chronicles 7 verse 14. A murmur arose amongst the crowd, and a young man stepped forth, emboldened by the testimonies of resurrection and faith. I will listen to you, Naaman. For if such a God can change a man like you, perhaps he can bring change to us too. The alarmed elders bristled at the boldness, yet a shift began. The words of Naaman, like gentle raindrops on dry ground, coaxed open hearts that had been long closed. But as hope blossomed, so did resistance, for unseen forces plotted against this burgeoning faith. Quietly, in the shadows, those who thrived upon the status quo conspired in their hearts. What if this newfound faith threatened their grip on power? The storm was not spent, rather, it deepened, swirling around Naaman as he stood at the crossroads of revival and rejection. And as Naaman braced for what lay ahead, he sensed the divine tension in the air, an echo of God's sovereign plan weaving through every fiber of the unfolding drama. Could it be that his testimony was but the first pebble in a cascade that would reshape the very essence of Israel's faith? As the thoughts echoed in his mind, he realized the battle for souls had only just begun, and the outcome would forever alter the tapestry of God's chosen people. What heavenly destinies awaited as the command of the Almighty beckoned forth a confrontation with the forces of darkness? As days slipped into weeks, Naaman persisted with fervor, a beacon of light amidst the shadows cast upon his homeland by years of tradition and fear. He traveled from village to village, sharing tales of how the God of Israel breathed life into his brokenness and transformed him from a leprous outcast into a cleansed champion of faith. Yet, the bondage of disbelief remained rampant, and he faced the weight of a difficult truth: not every heart would open to the message of salvation. The elders, those who once held sway with words woven into the fabric of the people's lives, drew closer, their voices low with discontent. This Naaman, a foreigner, would have us forsake our gods. One sneered. He is but a puppet of a greater power, sent to lead us into ruin. The subtle tension within the crowds revealed a heart-gripping fear that sought to extinguish the burgeoning flame of faith. But Naaman knew too well the power of God's grace. having felt it pierce through the veil of despair that had once marked his days. "O Israel!" he cried, standing before them one fateful evening as twilight draped itself over the hills. "Your God longs for you. He is not a mere trinket of wood or stone but the great I Am, who heals the broken-hearted and binds up their wounds. Will you not turn and embrace him?" At that moment, a stirring arose in the hearts of some, a mingling of doubt with a desire for hope. Among those gathered stood a woman, eyes glistening with tears of remembrance. "I, too, once knew suffering," she spoke softly, her voice gaining volume. "The illness that is not merely physical but of the spirit. I sought healing among the idols of my fathers, yet in the depths of my despair, I never found a balm. Perhaps there is truth in your words, Naaman." Encouraged by her boldness, others began to voice their agreement. "I remember the healing spoken of in the tales of our forefathers. Could it be that our hearts have been steeled against the very one who would save us?" A man ventured, sparking embers of faith within the gathering. Yet, resistance remained. The elders, relegated to the shadows, began to conspire more fervently. "We shall not permit this outsider to lead our own astray." They plotted, for they felt their grip on authority slipping. With fearful hearts, they approached the king, hoping to quench the awakening faith ignited by Naaman's words. Meanwhile, Naaman, emboldened as he had never been before, found himself in prayer. "O Lord," he beseeched, "give me the strength to stand firm against the voices of doubt and division. Awaken the hearts of your people. Show them the love that dwells within your covenant." Days later, as the sun climbed high, a tumult swept through the streets. Foul words from the elders dripped with venom. "The God of Israel is not for us. He has deceived Naaman," they proclaimed, rallying the skeptical masses with fear-laden rhetoric. "Let us rise together to force this traitor to bow before the true gods of our ancestors." At that moment, Naaman felt a weight heavier than any sword bear down upon his soul. The people he sought to guide toward salvation now stood divided. He could see doubt and fear threatening to extinguish the light of faith. He raised his hands, pleading for their attention. "O Israel!" His voice rang out through the chaos, clarity peeking through his troubled heart. "We face not a battle of swords, but of souls. The God who healed me is the one who desires to heal our land. Will you not trust him who created the stars and parted the sea?" His passionate plea resonated for an instant, silence reigning as hearts weighed faith against fear. But the whirlwind of doubt picked up speed as the elders called upon their rituals, raising their idols in protest. They shouted, "Dare not forsake the ancient ways." Faced with a choice, Naaman recalled the gentle whisper of the prophet Elisha, and in his spirit, he felt the steadying hand of the Almighty. A surge of boldness overcame him. "I once was blind, wrapped in the darkness of pride. But this day, I am healed, and with that healing comes the duty to proclaim His glory." This is no longer just a personal testimony, this is a call to every heart burdened by fear. Suddenly, amid the turmoil, a child stepped forward, small yet bold. He lifted a finger towards Naaman. "I believe you. You carry the soil of Israel, but do you not bring the truth of the living God? If he healed you, then could he not give us life too?" Seeing the child, murmurs spread through the crowd, shifted once more. The elders faltered, doubts flickered in their eyes. In that moment, Naaman understood the depths of his mission. It was not solely to transform the hearts of men, but to awaken their faith, lead them from fear into the promise of true salvation. Drawing closer to the crowd, Naaman spoke, his heart beating fervently. "Let us remember, it was never the waters of the Jordan, but the God of Israel who saves. He has come not for the righteous, but for the lost. Come with me, and together let us seek him." And as he extended an invitation, the sun broke through the clouds, illuminating the path forward. Many took hesitant steps toward him, breaking the stronghold of skepticism. "Yes, we will seek the God of Israel." More voices began to join in, harmonizing as a chorus of renewed faith began to emerge. In those moments, the tide began to shift, a small flame sparked into a glorious blaze of hope, echoing the biblical promise that God's word would never return void. What Naaman had begun in faith would become a movement toward redemption. But little did he know, even as revival began to stir, a greater test loomed. For the elders would stop at nothing, and the forces of darkness would rise against this newly ignited faith, determined to stifle a light that sought to shine. As night descended upon the land, Naaman's heart soared with excitement yet trembled at the gravity of the mission ahead. God was weaving a tapestry through him that would change not just his life but touch generations yet unborn. And with the dawn approaching, Naaman prepared his heart for battle, knowing full well that faith was the key. It was the sword of the Spirit that would ensure the victory of God's sovereign plan for his people. What awaited him at sunrise would shape the very destiny of a nation, and the unfolding promise of God clung to him like a mantle of grace. Thus the scene was set, as the followers gathered around him, each heart etched with expectation, ready to witness the culmination of their faith in God's redemptive plan written throughout the tapestry of time. Now, dear friends, as you ponder this powerful account of faith and transformation, I urge you to reflect upon your journey with the Lord. You need to subscribe now to stay connected to God's Word, so you won't miss the next unfolding divine narratives that inspire and uplift. Leave a like now to help spread God's Word through the algorithm. It is a small gesture that carries great weight in the kingdom. Comment below your spiritual reflections and share how this biblical story impacted your faith. I long to hear how God is working in your lives. And don't delay, share instantly this powerful testimony with at least 5 friends who need to hear God's truth. This is the moment to help spread biblical truth, as together we cultivate a community of faith, hope, and love. Let us be vessels of His grace, ushering in the kingdom one soul at a time.